We are answering question 1 today. When will these things happen? And that means, when will the temple be destroyed? Okay. When will the temple be destroyed? So Jesus, remember, they asked the question and Jesus starts answering it right away. So now what we're looking for, if partial preterism, the timeline is correct, and the tribulation has already happened. If that's correct, then all the things that Jesus says when he's answering number 1 question, they will be things that already happened in the past. So as we are looking at these scriptures, we are looking to see if these indeed are things that happened in the past, okay? Partial or premillennialist, futurist say that all the things that Jesus says in response to this question, that those things have not happened yet. Okay, so this is how we're comparing and contrasting to see, what does the Bible say and how do we interpret it? Are these talking about things that have already happened or things that still are yet to happen? Okay, the next thing Jesus says is there will be famines. Were there famines? So yes, so we actually hear about famines in the Bible, because in Acts 11, we hear about, if you remember reading this, one of the prophetic early Christians prophesies that this great famine is going to happen, and then we hear about it happening. And so it was so bad that there were Christians in areas where it was not as bad, and they were sending food to Christians in the other areas where the famine was really, really bad. Okay, so when we also hear about the famines during that time, so this is from the time that Jesus left until AD 70, when the Jerusalem was destroyed. So we have some extra biblical accounts of how bad the famines were during that time. So when we get some of these from Josephus. Okay, so if you haven't heard of Josephus, he is a very well-respected historian. He was Jewish. He wasn't Christian, but he was Jewish. He lived during this time. He lived in exactly this time period. He was hired by the Romans to record all of this history. So he was actually there. He actually saw with his own eyes what was happening when Jerusalem was destroyed and the things that were happening in the years before it. So he describes the famine. And I'm not going to read all this, but he describes this horrific things where people were killing each other. They were cannibalizing their own children. It was just a terrible time. They were killing each other for food. It was just horrible. People were just dying in the streets because of how terrible the famine was. Okay, Jesus said then there will be earthquakes. Okay, so did that happen during that time period? Yes, indeed, it did. Okay, so do you remember hearing about the city of Pompeii that was destroyed by an earthquake? Do you know when that happened? That happened in AD 62. So that was 8 years before Jerusalem was destroyed. So it wasn't just Pompeii. Extra biblical sources tell that that during that time period, right before Jerusalem was destroyed, was a time of really unusually high seismic activity. So there were these earthquakes in all of these cities all over. So yes, that indeed did happen. And then Jesus says, but that's just the beginning. So you're going to watch for these things that are happening before the temple is destroyed. Okay. But that's just birth pains. And so you hear people saying that about right now. But my argument is that that's not talking about 2,000 years later. Jesus is talking about right then, within 40 years.